singer Rick Nelson, the evening's entertainment, had died in a plane crash. His fiancée and 5 others were also killed last evening when the plane went down in northeast Texas. Officials said this morning it's too soon to tell what caused the crash, but witnesses watched the plane catch fire in midair.
Ricky Nelson's fatal flight was a disaster years in the making. It was no accident. On New Year's Eve, 1985, the rock and roll legend's DC-3 went up in flames midair, killing everyone except the pilots. Official reports blamed a heater malfunction, but newly uncovered evidence tells a far darker story. What went wrong that fateful day? Who knew the plane wasn't safe? And why was it allowed to fly when everyone saw the warning signs? Join us as we unveil the mystery surrounding Ricky Nelson. 1985 Eve. That old Douglas DC-3 lifted off into the cold December sky with 8 people on board. Ricky Nelson sat in the cabin beside his fiancée, Helen Blair, and 5 bandmates, all heading to Dallas for a New Year's Eve gig. The plane had history, built during World War II, patched and repatched through the years, but no one paid it much attention. Everyone was thinking about the show ahead, the crowd waiting, and the music that always came alive on stage. Then, without warning, the night turned dark. Somewhere above DeKalb, Texas, a strange smell crept through the cabin. At first, it was faint, like burning wires. Heads turned, eyes darted around. Minutes later, smoke billowed from under the floorboards, thick and black, filling the air with poison. The heat climbed fast. People coughed, choked, and fought for breath. The sound of panic replaced the hum of the engines. Up front, the pilots caught the signs of trouble. They started emergency drills, calling out checklists, scanning the dark fields below for a place to bring her down. But the fire spread faster than training could handle. It fed on the plane's age, old insulation, tired wiring, and worn-out fittings. Years of wear now betrayed them all. When the DC-3 hit the ground, it was already burning. Both pilots crawled through the shattered cockpit glass, gasping for air, their skin blistered. They made it out, barely. Behind them, the cabin was gone. Ricky Nelson, Helen Blair, and the rest of the band never escaped. By the time rescuers reached the wreck, nothing was left but wreckage and silence. The boy who once lit up America's television screens, who helped shape country rock, was gone at 45. Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board moved fast. The first reports pointed to the cabin heater, faulty wiring, or maybe an electrical short. They couldn't prove it. The fire had erased nearly everything. Still, whispers started almost immediately. Tabloids ran wild, with claims of substances and talk of a party at altitude. The story turned from heartbreak to scandal overnight. But Nelson's family fought back hard. Toxicology reports showed no substances, no alcohol, nothing. Still, the rumors stuck. Aviation experts later questioned the maintenance logs. Musicians who'd flown that same plane before recalled the heater acting strange, with complaints brushed aside. The investigation never found a clean answer, and over time, it just faded. 4 decades on, it's still a mystery. A fire that took more than lives. It stole closure, too. Yet, somewhere, a few people never stopped looking for what really happened in that smoky Texas sky. So who exactly was the man whose death left people arguing for decades? The star who grew up on America's TV screens. Go back to May 8, 1940. A baby boy named Eric Hilliard Nelson comes into the world in Teaneck, New Jersey. His parents, Ozzie and Harriet Nelson, aren't just any couple. They're showbiz royalty, musicians, actors, and household names already adored across America. From the very beginning, little Ricky isn't just around entertainment. He's practically born under the spotlight. When the Nelsons make the jump from radio to television, they take him right along. Their new series, The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, hits screens in the early 1950s, and the country falls in love, not with a made-up family, but with the real Nelsons living what looks like real life. Each week, millions tune in to watch Ricky grow up in their living rooms, from a cheeky kid into a charming teen with perfect hair and an easy smile. No one's ever seen anything like it. This wasn't an actor playing a role. This was a boy growing up in front of America. Viewers felt like they knew him. They watched him struggle with homework, talk to girls, and play sports. Ricky became the nation's son, the kid next door every mom wished was hers. But Ricky didn't want to stay the sweet sitcom kid forever. In 1957, he found his calling. Rock and roll was exploding across the country, shaking up youth culture and scaring the life out of parents. Elvis was out there swiveling hips, setting off moral panic on live TV. Then Ricky Nelson showed up with a guitar and changed the game. He recorded his first single, a cover of Fats Domino's I'm Walkin'. But instead of danger and rebellion, Ricky brought polish. He looked clean-cut, respectable, and safe. When he performed rock music on Ozzie and Harriet, it didn't feel like a threat anymore. Suddenly, the same parents who feared Elvis were smiling as their daughters swooned over Ricky. He'd made rock and roll acceptable for middle America. The record shot up the charts. The industry noticed. He had the voice, the reach, and a built-in TV audience of millions. Then came the hits: Hello, Mary Lou, Travelin' Man, Poor Little Fool, Lonesome Town, and It's Late. Every release climbed higher. By 21, Ricky had sold over 1 million records and stood shoulder to shoulder with Elvis himself. But unlike other teen idols who burnt out quickly, Ricky was serious about his craft. He didn't just want fame, he wanted to grow. He studied music, wrote his own songs, and played with new sounds. And soon, television executives realized what the fans already knew. Ricky Nelson wasn't just a performer. He was a true multimedia star, equally at home with a guitar or a script in his hands. Still, all that fame on television didn't quite set him up for what came next: his big Hollywood break. Teen idol turns serious actor. Back in 1952, Ricky Nelson made his first real move into film with Here Come the Nelsons, a lighthearted family comedy built to ride on the popularity of their hit TV show. It wasn't groundbreaking cinema, but it did something important. It showed Ricky belonged on the big screen. The camera caught every spark of his charm, every flicker of that easy confidence. A year later, he landed something heavier. Legendary director Vincente Minnelli cast him in The Story of Three Loves, a polished MGM production with real weight behind it. Ricky played the younger version of Farley Granger's character. It wasn't a large role, but it was enough to prove the kid had more to offer than just a winning smile and a guitar. He could act. Then came 1959, the turning point. Howard Hawks, one of Hollywood's most respected directors, was putting together Rio Bravo, a Western starring John Wayne and Dean Martin. Hawks needed a young gunslinger to balance the two veterans, and he took a gamble on Ricky Nelson. That gamble paid off. Ricky didn't just keep up with Wayne and Martin, he brought fire to every scene, that mix of youthful swagger and quiet steel. Hawks later admitted it was Nelson's spark that pushed the film to box office glory. And just like that, the clean-cut teen idol turned into a genuine Hollywood heavyweight. In 1960, Ricky teamed up with Jack Lemmon in The Wackiest Chip in the Army, a wartime comedy that did well enough to spin off into a television series. He skipped the TV version, but the film proved he could handle both laughs and emotion with ease. Around that time, he also started appearing on anthology shows like General Electric Theater, showing a side of himself that went way beyond his music career. By 1965, he was back working with family. His father, Ozzy, wrote and directed Love and Kisses, a romantic comedy that gave Ricky the lead. It wasn't a huge hit, but it meant something deeper. A father passing the torch to his son, right on screen. Through the late 60s and 70s, Ricky stayed busy on television. He brought grit to Hondo as Jesse James, then popped up in the Over the Hill Gang with Walter Brennan and Pat O'Brien. The guest spots kept coming. McCloud, The Streets of San Francisco, Owen Marshall, Petrocelli, and A Twist in the Tale. Each time, ratings jumped. He even showed up on the Hardy Boys / Nancy Drew Mysteries as Tony Eagle, singing a few of his classic hits, reminding fans that the music was still part of him. Later came The Love Boat, then TV movies like 3 on a Date and High School USA in the early 80s. No matter the decade or format, Ricky Nelson proved something few ever could. He wasn't just a teen idol or a rock star. He was a full-fledged entertainer who could own a scene, no matter the script. But while his career kept climbing, something inside his music started to change. What is that? You can't please everyone. The mid-1960s hit Ricky Nelson like a storm. Music was changing fast. The British invasion had arrived, bringing the Beatles, the Rolling Stones, and a new kind of sound that made early rock and roll feel old overnight. Then came psychedelic rock, folk rock, and garage rock. The airwaves were filled with rawer, louder, more experimental music. Ricky's smooth pop style suddenly felt out of place. Sales dipped. His songs weren't charting like they used to. For the first time since 1957, he wasn't on constant radio rotation. Most artists from his era either bowed out quietly or tried to chase the new sound, copying whatever was hot that month. But Ricky wasn't built that way. He chose a different road. He turned towards something deeper, country rock. It was still finding its shape in California's music scene, a blend of storytelling, country roots, and rock's electric energy. He put together the Stone Canyon Band, bringing in players who shared his vision. Their sound was unpolished, honest, and full of heart. They weren't trying to fit in, they were building something new. Few realized it then, but Ricky and his band were helping shape a genre that would later define acts like the Eagles and Poco. It was a bold move, trading safety for authenticity. For a while, it looked like it wouldn't work. Rock radio ignored him, and country stations didn't know what to make of a former teen idol going twangy. He was in no man's land, not fully accepted by either crowd. Then came October 25th, 1971. Madison Square Garden hosted the Rock and Roll Revival Concert, a nostalgic celebration of rock's early days. Ricky showed up expecting cheers from the same people who'd grown up with him. But when he started playing his new material, the crowd didn't want to hear it. They wanted the old hits. Some booed, others just talked through his set. It cut deep. Instead of quitting, Ricky turned that pain into art. He wrote Garden Party, a song about that night and about something bigger. It was about staying true to yourself when the world wants you stuck in the past. You can't please everyone, so you've got to please yourself. Released in 1972, Garden Party hit number 6 on the Billboard Hot 100. It wasn't just a comeback, it was a declaration. From then on, Ricky Nelson wasn't chasing trends. He was making music his way, honest, fearless, and free. But while the world saw him as this fearless artist breaking rules, his life behind closed doors was a whole different story. Mother's approval and a fairy tale wedding. As a teenager, Ricky Nelson became one of America's favorite idols. Crowds of girls scream his name at concerts. Letters pile up faster than the mail trucks can carry them. And every magazine seems to want his face on the cover. Fame wraps around him like a spotlight he can't escape. And with it comes attention, lots of it, from young women hoping to meet the handsome boy they've watched grow up on television. Like any kid his age, Ricky wants to date, to figure out love, to feel normal in a life that's anything but. He goes out with different girls, testing what he wants in a partner while juggling a career that's already too big for his age. But there's one person who still keeps a close eye on everything: his mother, Harriet Nelson. Harriet isn't just his mom. She's his co-star on The Adventures of Ozzie and Harriet, a show that has turned their real family into a living brand. She knows Hollywood inside out, how fast it can lift you, and how easily it can tear you apart. To her, image is everything. Respectability, manners, timing, those things matter more than most people realize in an industry built on perception. When Ricky brings girls around, Harriet often disapproves. Maybe the girls come from the wrong families. Maybe they seem too forward. Maybe they don't understand what it means to be part of a public family. Her reasons aren't cruel, just protective. She's seen too many young stars crash under the weight of bad choices, and she's determined her son won't become another Hollywood cautionary tale. Ricky understands that. He knows she means well. But it still stings, the constant scrutiny, the feeling that every date needs a stamp of approval. He wants to be dutiful, yet he's also desperate to be free. That quiet tug-of-war between family loyalty and growing independence shapes much of his youth. Then comes Kristin Harmon. Chris is everything Harriet's ever wanted for her son. Her father, Tom Harmon, is a Heisman Trophy winner turned sports broadcaster. Her mother, Elise Knox, is a respected actress from the 40s. The Harmons and the Nelsons have known each other for years. Two families built on talent, fame, and clean reputations. Harriet approves instantly. Ricky and Chris married in April of 1963. Their union splashed across every entertainment headline. To the public, it's a Hollywood dream. Two young stars, glowing with love, carrying on the legacy of their famous parents. The photos show perfection. The smiles, the elegance, the fairy tale everyone wanted to believe. And for a while, it really does look like that dream might last forever. But this picture-perfect marriage was about to bring something even more extraordinary into their world. Nelson's children. Ricky and Chris don't waste a minute building a family of their own. Their first child, Tracy Christine Nelson, comes along and immediately shows that same spark her father had. That effortless charm and stage presence you can't really teach. As she grows older, it's clear she's not content just being Ricky Nelson's daughter. She dives headfirst into acting, putting in the work, studying her craft, and carving out her own place in Hollywood. Before long, she lands major television and film roles. The biggest being her breakout in Father Dowling Mysteries, where she proves she's got the talent to stand on her own name. Then come the twins. On September 20th, 1967, Chris gives birth to Gunnar Eric Nelson and Matthew Gray Nelson, two boys who practically breathe music. From the start, it's obvious they didn't just inherit their dad's rhythm. They inherited his drive. They pick up instruments young, start writing songs, and spend their teenage years in makeshift studios and garages, chasing that sound they can call their own. By the late 80s, they'd trimmed the name down to just Nelson, clean, bold, and ready for the spotlight. Their sound hit like a perfect storm, tight melodic hooks wrapped in hard rock punch, the kind of music built for arenas and radio alike. Then, in 1990, they dropped Can't Live Without Your Love and Affection. And it didn't just chart, it rocketed straight to #1 on the Billboard Hot 100. That single moment locked the Nelson legacy into music history forever. 3 generations, 3 different eras, one unbroken line of chart-topping success. Ozzy ruled the early days with his easy charm and television-era fame. Ricky carried the torch through the golden age of rock and roll, turning teenage heartthrob energy into something timeless. And now Gunnar and Matthew were pushing that same name into the neon glow of a new decade, proving the family magic hadn't faded. It had evolved. In an industry built on one-hit wonders and fading stars, what the Nelsons pulled off was rare. They weren't just coasting on nostalgia or a familiar last name. They had the songs, the musicianship, the stagecraft. It wasn't about riding their father's legacy. It was about earning their own. That's the difference between fame that fades and history that sticks. And by the time Nelson hit #1, they weren't just continuing a story. They were rewriting what musical legacy really meant. Their youngest, Sam Hilliard Nelson, arrives last, carrying the same middle name his father once did, a nod to Ozzy, whose full name was Oswald George Nelson. Sam grows up creative too, though he stays out of the spotlight his siblings chase. He still honors the legacy in his own quiet way. For a while, it really does look like a dream. 4 gifted kids, a family built on music and fame, the Nelson story continuing just like a perfect song. But behind the smiles and photo spreads, cracks were already starting to show in that flawless picture. How deep will this crack dig in? When the fairy tale crumbled, the trouble doesn't explode overnight. It creeps in, slow and quiet, the kind of drift you barely notice until it's too late. After their youngest, Sam, is born, the strain on Ricky and Chris's marriage starts to tighten. What once looked like the perfect union between 2 people from the same world begins to feel uneasy, more like 2 lives slowly pulling apart. Ricky's always gone. He's touring nonstop with the Stone Canyon Band, playing clubs, theaters, anywhere that'll have him. He's chasing that next hit, trying to prove he's more than the boy who sang Hello, Mary Lou. That kind of redemption tour eats time, and time's the one thing he doesn't have enough of. Back home, Chris is juggling it all. 4 kids, non-stop schedules, media calls, appearances, the whole circus. She's not just running a household, she's guarding an image, because being married to a Nelson means your life isn't really your own. The fatigue sinks in, the silence gets heavier, and she's holding the pieces together while he's out there on the road, singing to crowds she'll never meet. After a while, the distance isn't about geography anymore. They've grown into strangers wearing familiar faces. 2 people chasing different kinds of fulfillment. The man Ricky's turning into isn't the same one she fell in love with, and the woman Chris is becoming doesn't match the version he once thought he knew. Then the gossip hits. Whispers about affairs float around the tabloids. His, hers, nobody really knows. The headlines don't care about truth, they care about scandal. The picture-perfect family starts to feel like a script that's run out of lines. At home, the silence turns to shouting. Conversations turn sharp. Love gets buried under resentment and fatigue. They keep smiling for the cameras, showing up to events, and pretending the Nelson magic's still real, but behind the walls, it's crumbling. By the late 1970s, they're barely holding on. The separation feels inevitable, and when the divorce finally goes through in December 1982, it closes a chapter that had once looked like a fairy tale. 2 decades, 4 kids, and a legacy now tangled in court papers and custody battles. The breakup takes a toll on everyone. Ricky channels the pain the only way he knows, through music. His songs grow heavier, more reflective, and full of heartbreak and self-searching. The lyrics sound like therapy sessions set to melody. The smiling teen idol is long gone. What's left is a man who's lived through real loss, still trying to turn the wreckage into something that sounds like hope. His personal life was falling apart. It couldn't get any worse, right? But new doubts were starting to rise about his career. The investigation that finally broke through. For years after the crash, people kept circling the same questions, chasing the same trail, hoping for something new to surface. The National Transportation Safety Board's final report pointed toward a heater malfunction inside the cabin, but couldn't pin down what exactly caused it. Officially, the case stayed open. In reality, it froze in place. Still, not everyone was ready to let it fade. Aviation historians, especially those who knew vintage aircraft like the DC-3 inside out, started digging through its history. Forensic experts examined again old photographs from the crash site, shots that had been filed away and mostly forgotten. Journalists tracked down musicians and crew who'd flown on the same plane in the weeks before the tragedy, gathering stories that had never made it into any report. Then came a break. Buried maintenance records turned up, and they told a story nobody wanted to hear. The aircraft had a long list of issues, mostly tied to its heating system. There were multiple complaints about strange smells, uneven temperatures, and smoke drifting through the vents. These weren't small annoyances, they were warning signs. Aviation mechanics familiar with DC-3 systems later explained why that mattered. The heater on those planes sits beneath the cabin floor, surrounded by fuel lines, wiring, and insulation. Everything that can turn a spark into a firestorm if maintenance slips. When the surviving pilots finally gave detailed testimony, the sequence became clearer. The smoke didn't just burst out. It crept in, slowly building up before the full-blown emergency. There were moments when things might have still been saved. Bandmates who'd flown earlier spoke up too. They'd smelled burning, felt heat through the floorboards, complained to the operators, only to be brushed off with, "It's just an old heater? Nothing to worry about." Except there was plenty to worry about. Investigators later found proof of jury-rigged fixes, unauthorized patchwork jobs done with the wrong materials, violating every basic aviation standard. Corners were cut to save money and keep the plane flying. No certified repairs, no compliance checks, just shortcuts on top of shortcuts. That heater sat under the floor, next to insulation that should have been replaced years earlier. When it finally failed, the fire started right there, hidden until the cabin filled with smoke. Without proper extinguishers or fire retardant lining, the blaze tore through fast, trapping everyone inside. Forensic testing later confirmed the worst. Ricky Nelson and the passengers didn't die from the crash impact. The toxic smoke killed them first. Only the pilots survived, shielded by the cockpit door. close enough to open a window and gasp for air, while the rest were already gone. What did investigators uncover at the end that was even darker than the faulty machinery itself? They knew it was dangerous. This is the point where the story stops being just tragic and starts becoming infuriating. The investigation didn't just show that the fire could have been avoided. It proved that the people running that aircraft knew it was unsafe and let it fly anyway. The maintenance logs spell it out plainly. Repeated complaints about the faulty heater. Inspection reports point out the same unresolved problems, warnings that the patchwork fixes didn't meet airworthiness standards. Every clue was right there long before that last flight. The operators saw them all and still gave the green light. They knew the risks. They knew the musicians had raised concerns. And yet, they made the cold decision to keep the DC-3 in service. Why? It always comes down to the same thing in aviation: money and convenience. Taking that old DC-3 out of service for proper maintenance meant lost revenue, angry customers, and public embarrassment. Nobody wanted that. So they did what far too many small charter operators had done before: kept it flying, patched problems with cheap fixes, and told themselves it'd be fine. Every hour that plane stayed airborne meant another payday, another show, another client off their backs. They ignored the red flags, crossed their fingers, and hoped luck would hold. It didn't. That decision cost 8 people their lives. Then came the testimonies from former staff. Mechanics and crew described an operation where schedules mattered more than safety. They talked about being pushed to sign off on incomplete maintenance, to overlook minor leaks, to skip detailed inspections so the aircraft could stay profitable. It wasn't one careless choice. It was a pattern, baked into the company culture. Safety standards were treated like suggestions, not regulations. To aviation experts, the conclusion was plain: this disaster was preventable. A proper fix to the heater, adherence to FAA repair codes, and grounding the aircraft after repeated red flags, any of those steps could have saved lives. But instead, 7 people died because the company gambled with a defective heating system and lost. The victims' families waited decades for the full truth, only to learn what they probably feared from the start. Their loved ones were killed not by chance, but by indifference. It's a cruel irony. Ricky Nelson built his entire career on integrity. He refused to chase trends or compromise his art for a paycheck. Garden Party was his statement of independence, a man staying true to himself no matter the cost. And in the end, he was taken by people who made every choice he never would, valuing profit over principle, shortcuts over honesty. The investigation answered every question, but peace never came with it. Just anger and the unbearable thought that this never had to happen. 8 people boarded a plane that should have been grounded. Ricky Nelson's music still plays. His influence still runs deep in country rock. His children carry the torch. But the way he died, that failure of duty and conscience, will always hang in the air as a warning. This wasn't fate. It wasn't bad luck. It was human negligence at its worst, and it cost lives that should have lasted much longer. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the like button, leave nice comments, and don't forget to subscribe for more interesting content. Check out another interesting video by clicking on the video appearing on your screen right now.